This is the one everyone's been waiting for. So, assembly time. Tools of the trade for this one. Obviously glue. I like the CA glue. Comes from BSI adhesives. This stuff is super thick. Goes on very, very thick. And can be used for gap filling as well, especially when combined with Zip Kicker. Zip Kicker immediately sets glue. It does make it a little more brittle, less flexible, so I don't love using it on every piece, but it also will immediately set when I'm using for gap filling. I don't have to wait for it to dry, and it won't shrink as it dries. It just dries immediately. Toothpicks, once again, used for the gap filling to manipulate around the glue before using the Zip Kicker on it. And then hair dryer. And then I forgot to go get a bowl of water, so I'm gonna do that now. Bowl of cold water to use to set pieces that were molded. Yeah, that's the rumors going around. I think some people are getting worse than others. It has a lot of resin. If you see the previous posts, I've cleaned off a lot of the resin ports, and it does have some warping. There's definitely going to be some issues putting together this piece. But overall, it really isn't as bad as some people are making it out to be. But it's all individual, and some people are getting worse pieces than others. Some people like me are a little more used to the challenging kits and actually kind of enjoy the challenge a little bit. But that's one reason why I am doing this series, is to help people out that might need it. So this piece right here is going to go on here, and you can kind of see doesn't fit quite perfectly. I have to stretch it and bend it to make it fit. And I think what probably happened is it probably got heated during shipping and warped. There's a bit of a gap in there, but some Zip Kicker and glue will fill that in pretty well. And it's not gonna be in a very noticeable place. So I think the best thing to do to start is probably gonna be to put these side pieces on, and then I'll have a nice flat deck area to put the larger, flatter piece. I'm a big proponent of scoring when you're gonna glue, so I just see where the pieces are gonna touch, which is along here, here, and then underneath side of here. Scoring helps the glue grip a little better. It's still a smooth area, but you get a little bit more surface area for the glue to get down into where you score. That's that piece. Here's this piece. I know that all of this is going to be on the underside of the deck, so I might as well just score it now. Just a sharp razor, just running little lines across it, and I do a crosshatch pattern. So one way, then the other. Trying to be careful not to cut my finger off. Bead of glue. So it stops around there. Set that in, hold it in place for about 30 seconds and let it dry. Resin glues fairly quickly, especially when you score. You can see how it does line up. There, there. The underside here. I don't see a whole bunch that's going to need to be gap filled on this particular join. Kind of see the light glinting off some of the gaps through here. Right there is probably going to need to have something to go into it. Right in here is the only real large-ish gap that I can see. And I'm honestly not even sure that that needs to be filled in. But I'll probably just do a bit of gap filling all around the edge here real quick. So you can kind of see normally how I do it. What I do, put a bit of a thick glue on here. Toothpick. Smooth out the glue. Make sure it's not blocking any detail. Get it out of any detail that's there. So now it's down in those gaps. Zip kicker. There's a spray end, but I think that uses way too much. So I just use the back end of it to put just a drop on there, which is all it really needs. And then you can use your blade to kind of check and see. And it's not falling in there, so it's been blocked. There's this gap right here. It's honestly big enough that green stuff might be a better solution. But just to show you how well zip kicker and thick glue can work, I can kind of work it in there and let you see. So I don't know if you can see there, but right now there's a layer of thick glue going about halfway up this bit. Zip kicker that. Now I got about half of it blocked up. Zip kicker also dries into the air very quickly. Now it's starting to fill up in there so that this can't quite go in. Bottom's pretty well gap filled at this point. Just needs a little more at the top. I don't want to have any of the wet zip kicker on there when I touch this to it, or it will instantly dry. The tip of my glue is already starting to get a little clogged. And I want to have some time to manipulate the glue in here into the shape I want it. And now it's solid right through there, all the way to the edge. No more hole. It's also carvable, so if you felt like you had a little too much, you can cut a little bit of it away. Take a little bit of the glue off. But overall, I feel like with the toothpick, smooth it out, it'll be just fine. The glue is MaxiCure CA from BSI Adhesives. They're sold through a lot of different hobby stores directly. They allow them to put their own labels and marketing on them. The other stuff is also from BSI Adhesives. They call it Instaset. You'll also hear it referred to as Zap-A-Gap or Zip Kicker because it instantly sets the glue, and I use it for gap filling quite a bit. All right, so that's for that side. I'll do the other side. Once this is down, then we'll put that deck on that's warped that needs to have the heat applied. Before I finish this up, one thing I want to check is just to make sure that I can actually get this sole piece in there before not having to build around it and then having to cut things apart to get it to go in. It looks like if I'm holding this in place, that will get down in there. Might need a little bit. I might end up having to use some heat just to bend those bottom bars out if this is all glued into place, because that's supposed to set down in there, I believe, and these are supposed to set on there. Like this. So that's how the sole piece goes on there. I think if I have this glued in, I don't feel it is. Different people may have gotten different results from different orders, so I'm not going to speak for anyone else's experience. And I personally am used to putting together models that have a little more difficulty to them, whereas others might not. So I think if I take this out, this is moving in just a little bit. I think with this next piece, I'm gonna wanna have this put together while that sole wave is in place. I'm just gonna hold it in place while I glue this one in, just to make sure it all fits. And then I can take the sole wave out and finish with my gap filling. So just score again. Give the glue more area to set on. I don't know if that answered all your questions there, Rafael. If anyone else has questions, feel free to ask. You'll just have to click into the main live cast. If you comment on the places where I shared it into the groups, I'm not going to see it until this is all done and I go check out the comments there. So if you want an answer as I'm working, you have to click into the actual live cast and go from there. All right, got that roughed up. So stops around there. As I was saying, I'm probably going to want to have this sole wave in place for when I glue this piece on to make sure that it all go together afterward. think the fit's actually pretty good for this piece. There's at least 2 pieces that I'm going to have to bend later to make fit correctly. The main deck that everyone's having trouble with, and then one of the top pieces on the top deck I think is not fitting correctly from my dry fit earlier. Just gotta give this about 30 seconds to set. Probably another gap I should fill in the back there. That should be up to the boat when it's assembled. All right, that should be set now. Mark this piece out. Now I got to fill that side. So let's get this part right here. This is the underside where you're barely ever going to see. But as I mentioned on earlier's, am something of a perfectionist. Favorite sculpt? That's a hard one. Kind of partial to the large based models, and I've only ever really collected Cryx, so probably the Wraith engine would be one of them for sure. Denny 3 is pretty cool, but I haven't painted her yet, so I don't know how nice I'll be able to make her look. Just checking to see these gaps are filled. So when I go to paint that, you're not going to see any of that gap. All right, so now I got a little bit of a gap through there. Just make sure this glue isn't in the detail with my toothpick. It's falling in a bit there. It's a bit of a larger gap, so I'm going to take a couple layers on that spot. No, it's not too bad. Just a touch more there. Dry off that Zappa gap before I apply more glue. And the other side has that same gap right in here. That's not bad. Once again, that's kind of tucked up in there. And also I noticed that this one had a bit of a mold bubble. Right here you can see. So I'm probably just going to use this to smooth that out as well. Put some of this there, some of this on that mold bubble. Take a toothpick and just smooth it out. So now it's hard to see because it's optically clear. But as I draw this over, I'm not feeling any more dimple there. So maybe a little bit. It does still shrink just a little as it dries. Not much get down in there. But as far as this bubble goes, and like I said, it is shaveable. So you can kind of cut the glue and smooth it out. Yeah, it's tough to see. Especially the glue does kind of dry frosted over when it dries naturally. It's more of a kind of frosted matte kind of look. But when you use the zip kicker, it goes completely translucent and kind of glossy. Don't knock the bottle over accidentally either. This stuff is liquid. But I don't know if you can see the toothpick I'm drawing over it, and it's not falling into that gap at all. All right, so I got this gap to fill right there. Zip kicker does dry super fast to get off the model. Well, the zip kicker will make it dry completely clear. It does get, it's more brittle when you use the zip kicker. I don't know if you were around when I said that. But it's still just as strong of a bond, but it loses the flexibility. So if it flexes, it can break off the piece. Got a little bit of glue dried up in this port right here, so I'm just kind of clearing that out quick. But honestly, I think that's probably fine. So now the piece that everyone is worried about, and rightfully so, is this deck piece right here. And you can probably see this is what people have been complaining about, how much of a warp it has. And again, that probably happened while they were packaged so tightly and then put into transport by the post office or whatnot. There's going to be a gap there when I'm done. I'll have to close that up. And kind of hold on to this. I'm holding that side. You can see how much this side is off. It needs to close up and get in there. You can kind of bend it back with your hands, but you don't want to have that constant strain on the glue. The glue might hold, but you know, a good shock and it might come loose. Resins is soft. If it gets heated, it will warp, and we're going to intentionally do that now. So, hairdryer. It's going to get loud, and you probably won't be able to hear me, but trying to get it started. I don't have it on a high heat setting, but it's still hot enough that I can't put my fingers directly into the heat. I can feel it starting to get soft there. So now, put it on. Make sure it's flat. Gently take it off and into the cold water. Camera over as I try to turn it off. There we go. will do. So now flat. I wanted to put this together first because I wanted to use it as a guide. So now there's probably needs to heat this piece up here and get that to sit in there a little more flush. This side is pretty good. And I may have had some heat inadvertently going on this piece of resin here because now it's off where it wasn't before. So I'm going to heat this side here and get that in there a little better. And heat this end here and this and get that out. Because right now it's more like that. And it should be more flat, and this should be more over. I don't know. It's probably going to depend on the paint you use and how thick it is and the primer. Definitely test it on a different piece first. But all right, loud again. You can feel it's got some flexibility to it now. So I can press into there. Kind of see it moving pretty easily. It's still pretty warm. And once I have it where I want it, just gonna be right about there. Try to keep it in place and dip it in the cold water. And now it fits a lot better. That is very true, that for those who don't see the comment, it is a derelict ship and it can have some breaks and some warps. That was what I was probably going to do originally when this came in. Probably the biggest complaint that I have about this is the way they packaged it. They had this big sole wave and this big heavy resin body here just sitting in the box. All the other little pieces were wrapped up together in bubble wrap, but those two were not protected from each other. And so during shipping, I had shipping right here. Up here, you can kind of see where I joined it, and back here. And luckily the chips were still in the box, and because resin is brittle and does chip cleanly, I was able to just glue them right back on. All right, so the only other thing I think is this piece right here seems to be, let me test fit the bottom piece while I have this on here. So this goes in here. There's quite a bit of gap there, but that's closable, I feel, with glue. I don't need to worry too much about that gap. That's like a 32nd of an inch. This side, when that's in there, is still a little far away. Let's test with this lower deck piece and see how well that fits in here. Well, it's pulling it apart a little as far as pushing them to either side. So I think I will heat it a bit. And then just get this side in here a little better on the top. And I'll use this in here to help space it off, but I don't want to heat it with that in there or this on there, because then it might warp those pieces again. So loud. feel it moving a little already. Obviously have to work quickly as I don't want it to cool before I'm ready. But now, pull that piece over and it's soft enough I can just pull it right into place on both of these. And the whole thing I'm just going to put in the water so that it keeps the shape. Drip off. But now I have a much tighter fit on this bottom piece, much tighter fit under here. And that's comfortable enough that I can glue and zip kick the rest for this part of it. Thinking about maybe doing this other side. Now that this fits all together so well, it's making me wonder if I shouldn't get this up just a tiny bit. But honestly, the glue will be able to hold that. I mean, I'm barely pressing on it at all to get it to be flush. You can see this is fairly flat here now too. But the biggest thing, of course, is that this deck here is flat, where it certainly was not before. All right, the other thing you don't want to use with CA glue is water. Water will act as a sort of insta-set, but it makes it not good. I believe CA glue is mostly set from the moisture in the air. All right, well, next thing is to score. Get ready for the glue on everywhere. Glue under there. These pieces have already been scored from before. Now this sits on here, so it gets glue under here. And on the back of these, I think the back of this doesn't fit very well against the deck, so there'll probably be quite a big gap filling there with the glue. So if you do use heat to bend your models, I would say I have heard never to use it on hard sprue plastic. That hard sprue plastic has a rather high melting point, and by the time it is soft enough to melt, you'll actually just melt the plastic and start losing all the detail, and it'll just blob up. Soft PVC, which is like the soft plastic that Privateer Press uses, can certainly be done like this, and I've certainly used it to straighten out things like spears. Typically there I won't use a hair dryer. I'll just put some water on to boil, and then just dip it very briefly, like 5 seconds or less, into there, and it makes it very pliable. Straighten it out, run under the cold tap, done and done. I think my glue's starting to clog. Yup. So, now you get a tip on how to unclog glue. To use a spill the zip kicker everywhere. Just the end of a bent out paper clip. clog out and get it from the other side of the tip. Glue unclogged. Try it off. Just hold it together for a good 30 seconds again. If it were metal, it would have to be longer. Now that's on. So now I can gap fill a bit more. Try not to lose too much detail down there. And now that's instantly set. Same things back there, because this is supposed to be ropes up against that deck. Push this down in there a bit. I have heard that you can absolutely glue things together with just holding it in place and then use heat on it. I just don't feel myself like that really shows what's happening, which is a lot of people are worried about the warping, and this way you can actually see the piece not being warped. Someone who doesn't mind glue on his fingers, so I just smooth some of that off. And also, I just don't know all the time if for sure that did release the tension or not. It's hard for me to tell. I don't have enough experience to know that, so I'd rather see the piece to be sure. All right, so that closed that up. There's a little bit more there. I will say, in defense of the people who don't appreciate the sculpt, oh, it didn't glue together right. I'm gonna have to heat that up a little right there to press it in. That this is definitely more work than I had to do for things like Denny 3, which just went together nicely and cleanly after a lot of cleaning up on our wings with a razor. Certainly the material was a lot more difficult to clean, but once it was cleaned, it went right together. This is certainly a lot of work. All right, so this piece needs to get pressed into there. So I'm going to use the hairdryer one more time, I believe, on this part. So loud again. It almost takes on like a rubbery kind of feel when it's warm. And that's supposed to be in there like that. Now that fits together a heck of a lot better. Again, I don't want the water that I use to cool it down on there while I'm using the glue and the zip kicker. Glue specifically. But now it is firm. That resin is not going anywhere now that it's cooled down. But before, where that piece was really far out there, it's now not. So it's going to have a seam there from the wood. I don't think there's much of a way around that. I can minimize it with the glue, but I don't want to fill in the detail too much around it either. So I can try to get this to out of the detail as much as I can. Just leave glue where I want it to be. Zip kicker. And now you may see a seam there because it doesn't have the same wood texture as around it, but it's not going to be a visible gap that you can see through there. All right. Blade, once again, probably fill that quick. Get too much glue on the toothpick, you can just wipe it off. A piece of paper towel handy. As I said before, this glue, once it's set like this, is kind of rubbery and brittle. Brittle, not rubbery, but it can be carved. Now I'm not feeling any gap in there. I'm not worried about this gap on the underside that's going to get covered up by the sole wave and not really visible at all. This side has one of a larger gap. I'm just going to zip kick that gap closed. This may take a couple of layers as that's a wider gap. First layer is going to get down into it, kind of stop it a little deeper. It's going to smooth it out. Some of that excess glue off. Let it fill in that gap some. Dry off the zip kicker. Get some more glue on there for the second layer. Yeah. Yeah. You can kind of run a light across it to see where the glue is, since it's clear, but it does have a glossy look. So I may have lost a little bit of detail around these rivets. But I don't think that that's enough to really spend time on. Honestly, the rest of this is pretty set. I guess I could get the inside of this. Make sure that that's, yeah, see my blade falls in there. So that'll show as a gap. Probably the same on the other side. Almost looks on this side like it didn't quite line up. It should be twisted more that way. But at this point, if I gap fill it, I'll be happy. A lot of glue down in there, so spread that up into the gap here. Don't want to run my toothpick down into the crevice of the gap or it'll accentuate that, but I am going to try to pick it out of these areas here as much as I can. Checking with my blade to feel how it feels. So this little detail right here will bump out a little further there, but once it gets primed, you're not really going to see much of that. So now I'm pretty happy with that side. Back to the other one. This gap right here. Make that little blob of goo out. Let's try to pick it out of the details some. Try not to lose too much of this detail by sharpening up that glue here. All right. So now there's glue covering that gap. And I'll lose some of the wood grain on there, but I'd rather have that loss of the wood grain. I think that'll show a lot less than that gap would. I also have to make a decision on how far I'm going to go before I paint. I'm kind of feeling like I could absolutely paint this as it is. I'm pretty sure that with the soles in place, just gonna work them into there. I can get a paintbrush down in there. I can get a paintbrush down to the end pieces. I can get a paintbrush on those soles just fine from anywhere that you're able to see it. Especially hitting it from the back here. I would much prefer myself to have it put together before painting. I think even with this piece in here, I'm not going to have a problem. know, I think I'll be okay. I see the recommendation to paint it separate, but the one thing I'm not going to do is take these cannons and put them in here. I think with the cannons in place, then I'm going to have a hard time getting down in there. I think with those in there, I'm not going to be able to get a paintbrush back to that back or around there. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint the cannons separate. But from what I'm seeing here, I can get a paintbrush down in there just fine. And people aren't really going to be staring down at the back of that ship anyway. So as long as I can hit it with something black to blacken it out in there. All right, so then I got to decide how this piece is going to go in here. It's really a horse apiece, front and back. Looks like that might not be the right way because that piece there, this does come forward more on this end than on this end, so I'm betting this will be the best fit. Yeah. And this piece right here and this piece right here line up pretty well. Looks like this is a little thicker on either end than this piece. So I'm gonna be more concerned about making sure the top of it looks good. I don't think anyone's going to see the bottom of that by the time you put a base on it. Or if you will, it won't be very visible. So I'll glue this piece in next, and then I just got to do the top pieces, the skulls. Once again, just scoring it to help the glue stick a little better. A little rough. When I first got this piece, it did have another level of flash on here that I had to break off. See that in one of the previous videos I made. Cross hatch it, rough that up, some glue there, some glue here, put that piece into place. Make sure I can get my soles still in there. It might have been better to put the soles in place first and then glue this piece on. But it looks like I can still work it in and out. Make it as level as possible with the boards next to it. You know what? I'm gonna re-glue that after I get this sole wave on there. I see no reason to do that now, or not to do that now. I already scored the top of this, so I'm not too worried about the bottom. And then all the touches down here and down here. So we'll help it out with some glue there. Back set in there, top set in there. And that's set. I'm not worried about the gap up there on the mast. Excess glue there, so I'll wipe that down with my finger and just make sure there's not a blob there when we're done. No, mine did not. I did have to do quite a bit of heat treatment, both to make this flat because it was not, and to kind of bend out these side pieces to make them flush here because it didn't want to sit very flush there. And you can kind of see here all the glue that I used as a gap fill on that right there. So there certainly was a lot of heating to get that to do that, but this here is pretty flush with that bit of detail right there, and the same thing right here. It's pretty flush. So I have heard of several people say that they felt that this piece was like a good maybe 1/16 inch even too long, but I have not seen that. I'm just gonna make sure that this little blob right here is water, and it is. Good. If that was glue, I'd be unhappy. I don't know how I would have done that. So that's all set, that's glued together. I'm gonna redo the sides of this piece and put this piece back in. So like this. Yeah, that way, okay. I think it's actually hitting the sole wave back there, so it's not going any further in. So I decided to put that sole wave in there first. Again, it does look like that gap there is wider and this piece is tall. You can see that the side pieces are a little there. So there's going to be gaps at the bottom, but that's not really something that overly concerns me much. And that's all set. And again, I'm not going to glue the cannons in yet. I think I will just gap fill a tiny bit. In here. And on this side. I don't think anyone's really going to be staring at the underside of this thing, but if nothing else, it'll add extra glue to support in case someone happens to grab it by this part or something. That piece is in there. All right. Get the mast. So this mast had a bunch of resin on one side, right there. You can see it's a little less smooth than the other one. So I'll just put the more smooth side forward. Score it. Score where it's going. Help that glue hold. Better side forward. Hold that down there for about 30 seconds. I think this is the better side anyhow. If you look at the detail on the top of it, you're going to see that splintered out part of that from the front a lot better than you would if that was turned around 180 degrees. So I don't know if that was intentional on Privateer's part, but it ended up working out. You can see the bottom part of the mast sticking down here. It's just part of the sculpted of the sole wave though. All right, now the back piece. This is the other part that I noticed had some warping issues, I believe. This is that door. One of the things people were complaining about is that this didn't fit in here very well. I did have to sit there and chisel out a bunch of this. And if you go to my previous videos on this, you'll see me doing that for probably about 20-30 minutes just to make sure this piece will fit in here. But now it does fit in there, and it fits in there rather securely. This piece right here is what I think is going to need to be a little heat treated, because if I put that on there, it fits, but you can see there's this little detail on the kind of door looking piece back here that's supposed to line up with that, and I can bend it so you can see. And then in the front, there's this piece of detail right here that's supposed to line up with that, and both won't line up together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this piece back here in, and then I can heat this up, put it in there, get it to mold right, and deal with it with the heat gun. I will score resin, obviously. I will score metal for sure. I don't really feel like you need to score the PVC or the hard plastic. I think that's got enough grip with regular old super glue. And the hard plastic, you can actually use plastic glue, but I just use super glue because it happens to be what I have. This part right here is also going to get covered up by the door piece. I'm actually going to put the glue on this. Up these sides a little. in there. Once again, I'm going to have some gap filling to do. Now that gap is solid. Test it with the knife. These gaps on the side are going to be visible. I don't know. Kind of feel like it will. I guess when in doubt, fill it. There's a lot of detail on this right here, so I'm going to be kind of careful with my toothpick to fill that in. Push it down in there. Find one that still has a sharp tip and doesn't have glue all over it. Push all that glue off of that detail some. Scoop off any excess. Just wipe it off on a paper towel. Work with glue fingers tomorrow. Still a bit more in this detail here. I want that crisp. It's the advantage that resin does have over the PVC plastic, is you can get that detail super crisp. The blade still falls in there in that spot, so I'll have to do just a little more. It's sealed up through there, and this side's actually pretty sealed up too. So I just need a little more right there. So there it is. All right, now this side here is the one that didn't really fit very well. Goes on there, but this piece should be more that way. This piece should be more that way. So now it's gonna get loud again as I use the hairdryer. Watch. At night, it's supposed to be open, the gate. You might have to leave it and come back. If you fast traveled there. I can just kind of bend it into place. It has that kind of rubber texture. And you can let it cool or put it in cold water. Harden right back up. I've noticed that resin does have a lower point of temperature, that it gets soft as compared to the PVC plastic, which needs to be warmed up a bit more. Honestly, resin might even be able to put it under like a warm tap water. Right there, now it lines lines up really well there. Lines up really well there. And that's ready to glue. But warm tap water could even be enough, depending on how hot you have your water heater set to. How high up does it go? All the way. Trying not to score where you're going to see later. Don't need it to be visible. Okay. Set that in. Make sure everything on both sides lines up. Let that start to set. Meanwhile, I can gap fill. I use enough glue that it started to get down in here already. But that area there needs a little. Trying to make sure we get it out of that detail. And I'm not too worried about that gap right there. That almost looks like it's supposed to be there. It's intentional. And once again there, it's a seam underneath the ship. No real seam there. No real seam there. So that piece looks pretty good. Chip the other side. I think this one wasn't nearly so bad and needed heat. It might be. That's supposed to be flush to the ground there, which puts it's just gonna be better off hitting that with the heat too. So loud. Now it's kind of rubber and stretchy again. That part there is in there pretty good. That part down there, pretty solid as well. You should not be afraid to use a hairdryer with resin, honestly. From what I hear, the only real danger is if you bend it too far over detail. You don't want to just start bending it like mad. See, this piece doesn't quite line up there still, but I don't think it's going to. I think that little piece of detail is almost in the wrong place for everything to line up. Just cool it off. Let's cold water and dry it off. So that lines up pretty well now. Set this bottom part here. So we'll just glue this on now. But yeah, it basically just becomes kind of rubbery when it's heated. It's not like it starts melting and you start getting your fingerprints in there and lose detail or anything weird like that. I mean, you might be able to see here, maybe the only thing that I kind of did was this kind of straighten versus this, so just more curved. So I might be able to heat that up and bend that out more. But it's fitting pretty well. So I don't think that's too much of a concern. I guess I could do that quick. Won't hurt it. Why not? All right, loud noises again. See how malleable that is. Just push that right out. Gonna give that the same curve the other side had. Probably lost that curve a little bit while I was making it fit up there. There we go. Need some gap filling under there. It's still pretty warm. I can just bend it down. All right. And that's it for everything but the cannons. Start putting the metal pieces on. Kind of scars pieces together. Should be it for the hair dryer. All right, so we got these two railings. Not sure which way it's supposed to go, but that way it's almost back to it, and I think that's probably it. Same on this side, it's probably supposed to go back to kind of like that. I can gap fill what little is left. Definitely score the underside of this metal. Metal to metal and metal to resin doesn't seem to be as quickly setting as resin to resin. Press that onto there. Let that set. Same thing on the underside. The other one. And I will post this video to the Cryx forum on the thread I've made there for the assembly as well, in case anyone missed the heat treating part, so needs to see it. Honestly, I think I might leave that gap. Otherwise it would look kind of strange that this side's thicker than this. Looks like it's an intentional piece otherwise, I bet. Ship wheel. Those are on there now. Dry fits like that. There we go. For the crew. Put these together individually first. That horn goes with this lady. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Just make sure you ask on the live feed itself and not where I shared it into various groups, otherwise I won't see it. This is about the point where I usually drop one of these horns. I have to spend about 10 minutes on the carpet hunting for it. That might be the wrong horn. I think it's this one. There, that one matches. And since I'm live streaming, I'm sure it'll happen more often than normal. We'll see. Horror stories of the original Cryx sculpt. Every horn was individual. Glad we are in more civilized times. Just trying to make sure they're as even as possible. Texture matches, so I definitely got the right horn. I'm not too worried about this being brittle. So now that I got it positioned like I like it, I'm gonna just put some zip kicker on there. That's one crewman. Next is this one with the legs separate. Leg goes up in there. Make sure the feet are fairly flat. They are. So you've got contact, back of the leg, and the top. I think this is the one that the Cryx forum helped design because she's got the chipped off horn at the top there. It's the one I'd recommended to do. Hold this for a good 20-30 seconds, perhaps longer because it's metal. Smaller McCann? I don't know how you shout people out. Once again, I'm not too worried about this being a brittle joint, so zip kicker. So this horn bends back. Pretty sure this is, let's see what else is. That one bends back. I think it might be one of the others. Here we go. That's the right one. Okay. Scored a bit. The horn hole. Horn in the horn. That's just lining it up. There we go. Just like that. Spot where my finger comes apart with it. Oh, nope. Yeah. All right, 2 down. This one here. The 2 horns left, and that one's Scars. She's got the great rack. There we go. That one goes in there. This one doesn't have a separate leg or anything. Bump the camera. Try to get them to match up. That's perfect right there. No scar. Okay. A little convenient piece of detail there to hook my fingernail on. This horn is not cooperating. profile look the same. All right. Then her leg. The hole in socket is a little oval so that you don't have it at the wrong angle. It really only fits in one way, not a lot of give, which is good. Flush up and zip kick it. So now her hand is on there, her feet are there and there. Looking forward, that's about the right spot. So let's do a little bit of scoring on our hand. Top of this wheel for some glue there. Bottom of her feet. Spotting where her feet lie on the ship, where I'm going to put her. Score that up a bit, strengthen that joint. I'd considered pinning, but I'm not going to be picking it up by the fingers. Don't want to use too much glue on any of these spots or I'll lose some detail around her feet. Don't want it to look like she's standing on a glob of gunk on there. I want it to look like her feet are on the deck of the ship. So I'll just take my toothpick, run it around her feet, make sure any glue is not gathering. Here's where I probably will not use zip kicker. I want the flexibility. If someone bumps her, the glue can kind of flex at least just a little bit. But now she is on there. It's going to be painting this back area here a little fun. Oh, I forgot the little skull in her backpack. That's all right. Let's see where that went. Just checking my phone here. Doug Hamilton had posted a render. To show where the skull aligns on our backpack. Faces mouth open, mouth up, head down, and there's the money shot. All right, so now this little skull goes on this backpack part of her. The second one is being covered by her hair. So I'm actually going to use pliers here to hold it, because I can't see right with my big old hand in the way. So that kind of goes on here like this. There's a dot depression there. There's a bump on her backpack. It's going to go like that. If I had a third hand, I'd put some zip kicker on that thing right now. I'll let this go, it's just gonna fall. Yeah. Here, that's what I can do. Drop everything. Switch up my grip on this a little. Put it on there. There we go. All right, so Skar's on there. Now it's just her crew. I don't know if there's really a preferred placement of these. So when I don't know, I default to the studio model. Really doesn't matter where they go. But in the studio model, it appears. Open image. They have lady with the up standing in front here. Probably face everyone forward, because why not? Okay. One with the sword down over here. And with the sword out on the right. Kind of makes sense. So let's score their feet. And again, I'm a big fan of putting everything together first and then painting. As long as my brush is going to be able to hit everywhere, and I'm going to be able to get my brush around this stuff, no problem. Get back in here, get the back of this model, as long as I don't put her back up against it, which I wouldn't do. Just kind of spot where her feet are going to go. Score up the resin a bit. Give the glue some help. I wouldn't mind continuing these videos until the whole thing's painted. Kind of be like a hobby hangout kind of thing. So once again, just kind of run my toothpick on the glue around her feet. Make sure I don't have any big patches of glue hanging out. Don't want them to look like they're standing in muck. And just hold really still for about 20 or 30 seconds. Super exciting to watch, I know. On there. Sort of down lady. Just put kind of like this she was on the model. Right about there. Rough up the resin a bit. My guess is at some point some of these models are going to be coming loose. Some will bump them. And at that point I might consider actually pinning them. But if that never happens, then I never need to pin. On. Last one, put back here. Put it more forward than back. See, that one's on there now. Again, I could lever her off, but there's no way to do that short of pinning that's gonna really keep her on. I'm trying to keep faces forward as I can, so she'll end up kind of looking this way. Everyone's kind of leaning forward, but it doesn't seem unnatural. Just like there's movement. Almost have her feet crossing that way. She can be the other side. That's a pretty good spot. I'm not going to glue her on her base tonight. I think after I glue this one down, I'll be done for the evening. I think next time, probably tomorrow night, I will magnetize the base. You guys can see how I do that. Glue it down and then get the ballast on it to get the basing started. Still setting. And there you have it. Oh, see, still setting. Try to lift it up to show it off, and of course the last one comes apart. It's gripping now. Then I get frustrated and I do this. I'll let that set overnight, and then I'll test just give them a little press on each of them, make sure that they're on there well. They seem to be pretty good though. Water. Soul wave crashing up through the back. The only thing I didn't put under the cannon so that I can actually paint the underside of the deck here. Probably going to do that with a lot of the glow. It's probably going to be all purples and magentas down there to make it look like that soul wave is really glowing, because with that many souls it would. Get one side of the cannons painted normal where the souls are not lighting it up, and paint the other side so that if you happen to see it from inside here, you'd see the glow all over that side of the cannon. I know that people had them facing out, but I'll just face them out the windows. All right, well, should be back to it tomorrow where I can put it on the base after magnetizing it, put the ballast on, and then when that's dry, I can start priming and painting. Have a good night, everybody.